Is Wraith worth a watch? Welcome to Rotted Review of the Day. And today we're going to be taking a spoiler-free but potentially controversial and divisive look at the 2017 movie Wraith. We will be, as always, having a spoiler-filled deep dive discussion video accompanying this one coming out the same day. But if you haven't seen the movie and you're wondering whether or not you should, this video is spoiler-free and safe. I find myself in a unique position with this because the reason I say that this movie is, well, this review is going to be potentially controversial and divisive is because the subtext element of the movie is itself controversial and divisive. And I find myself in a difficult position with it because I have an opinion that runs counter to the moral message the movie was trying to convey, but I also want to remain objective in my review of it, which is doubly difficult considering that I didn't much like this movie for several reasons. I can't really recommend it. Spoiler alert as far as the rating of this movie and this review goes. I didn't like it. I can't recommend it. But how do I convey that without sounding like I'm railing on the message that it was trying to give? Without sounding like this review is political instead of a movie review. And I guess the best way I can do that is by just being clear and upfront. The topic that this movie addresses is abortion versus anti-abortion. And just to be totally transparent about it, I am pro-choice. That's not to say that I am pro-abortion. What I am is pro a woman's right to choose. I am anti-legislation. I am of the belief that it should be an option available for those that just make the decision on their own to seek it out in a safe and responsible manner. And that's all I'm really going to say on it. That's my belief. And the only thing I can really say is that I am approaching this review as an objective reviewer, somebody that watched the movie and is going to honestly, buckle up. I'm going to eviscerate this movie, and the reason for it has nothing to do with the underlying message. I I don't agree with a series of aristocrats taking teenagers by gunpoint and raping them and forcing them to eat poop, but I enjoyed 120 Days of Sodom. The movie has to stand on its own feet, and I will review it objectively even if I agree or disagree with the subject matter or the subtext at hand. So that's pretty much all I can really say on it without digging myself into a grave. If you don't believe that I can be objective about it, then perhaps this review isn't for you. Perhaps this channel isn't for you. That's all I'll really say about it. So moving forward, let's go ahead and start this review. As always, 5 different categories, each category worth up to 20 points for a total possible score of 100 points. Now, I already covered the subtext. I'm not going to go into that anymore. The plot is generally a not older couple, but let's just say not a young couple. They already have a teenage daughter, and they find themselves in a situation of a unexpected pregnancy. And as they're trying to make a decision which way to go with that in the course of their lives that have been established, what they can afford, what they can't afford, what their lives can accommodate, what it can accommodate, how this is going to affect their their daughter in the present. As they're trying to make this decision, supernatural elements all of a sudden start occurring around the house that they live in. And that's generally the way that the plot works. The it didn't work for me on several levels. in how it handled the storyline and how it handled the scares and how it handled the subtext. I think there was just a lot more elements of it that could have been done better, more uniquely, less cliched, and just ultimately better. I gave the plot and subtext a 9. Again, this is not me judging the moral message. It's me judging the delivery method of that message. I thought it could be a lot more effective. There was nothing about it that really hit home. There was nothing about it that tore my insides up and made me think about what it was trying to say. It really seemed like a paint by numbers version of a movie. Every element there was just the most obvious one leading to the next scene, and every scene was only in service of leading up to the next scene, which was only in service of leading up to a softball subtext. That's my opinion. The intent, I gave a 10 out of 20. I'd say it's about average on that. The intent was obviously to have a scary movie with some good jump scares that was character driven and to deliver a moral message, the moral message of the filmmakers and the directors and the writers, who in this case was the same person, the director and the writer. And I thought that it did an adequate job of this, but again, it could have been done so much better. When the nature of the scares fails, when the nature of the plot delivering the message fails, then I have to say that if that was the intent, to be scary and deliver a message, that ultimately that did fail. However, it also at the same time was a moderately entertaining movie. It did deliver the message, it did deliver the plot, it did have the characters drive it. It just felt rough and generic and too easy. So 10 out of 20 points for there. I really can't get it any higher than that. The acting was the portion of this movie that I think suffered the most. And I am not of the type of character that wants to be mean. I am not, a host of a music talent show. I don't thrive on that. But I have to be absolutely honest when I say that the character of the daughter and the actress that played her was a terrible performance. I could not. Any attempt I made at immersion was completely broken the minute she opened her mouth. And a lot of that had to do with the writing. There was a lot of the not just how it was said, but what was said. And it was just the most awful caricature of a teenage daughter that is supposed to be angsty without any reason to be angsty. There was no meat to it. And I think it was the fault of the writer-director for providing what was on the page that she read, but I can't say that it's not the fault of the actress as well, because it was so fake and cardboard and stilted and nothing about it felt real. It was almost laughable. Again, I don't want to be mean, but when I say almost laughable, the fact of the matter is it was laughable. I honestly, at several points in the movie, had to stop because I had to pause because I was giggling at some lines that were delivered that were supposed to be serious. It was pretty darn bad. Again, I'm not in the business of being mean, but so I'm not going to go any further than that. But I gave the acting a 7 out of 10. The shining example was honestly the reason that I picked this movie, which was Lance Henriksen was in it. And unfortunately, he had a fairly small role as a blind priest. But regardless, I thought he did a pretty good job in it. There were moments that I thought the mother and father did okay. Ultimately, it wasn't absolutely terrible, but the daughter's performance in particular really knocked a whole handful of points down on this. So, yeah, can't do any better than a 7 on that. The effects, this is not an effects laden movie. It wasn't relying on it. It didn't have a lot of blood and gore, creature effects, anything like that. It was mostly just, most of the scares were done in the editing room. So I gave it a 10 out of 20. For that, I really can't grade what isn't there. And this is an example of some difficulty that I have in the grading system that I've created for this channel. Is effects are such an important part of horror movies that I really feel like it needs its own category. But at the same time, if a movie chooses not to have them, how do I properly grade that? And I think in a situation like that, the best I can really do is to go from effects and just generally say the feel of the movie, the cinematography, the lighting, the sound design. It's basically shifting aspects from one technical achievement of a film that would be effects heavy and shifting it to a different level of technical aptitude in a movie that chooses not to go that route. Some movies don't have a big budget, they can't afford that. Some movies just choose not to go that route, and I have a feeling the latter is the case of Wraith. So in this case, I am looking at the technical aptitude of the film, and as far as the editing, as far as the camera work, and all of it was okay at best. So 10 out of 20 for effects. Maybe in the future I'll rename effects to technical. Fear quotient, nothing about this was scary to me. I gave this a 3. I think there was maybe one jump scare that didn't make me jump, but even so, just kind of, inside, did that little stomach heart. But other than that, yeah, nothing about it was scary to me. Nothing about it was suspenseful, creepy, terrorizing, anything like that. I really just, and 3 is probably, I didn't want to give this a total 0 because I don't think it deserved a total 0. It just, in terms of horror, I think it failed. So 3 out of 20 for that. For a total score of 39, and no terrible surprise, I really just can't recommend this movie. To the point where if somebody said, hey, I just saw this movie, I can stream it on Chiller or whatever. I don't know if you can. I'll have to look into that. But actually, speaking of which, I am going to be, every chance I get, at every opportunity where a movie is available, providing a link in the description where you can click that and find out where you can stream, rent, or buy the movie that I'm reviewing. And that is thanks to justwatch.com. Not a sponsor, just a site that I particularly like. So, but if somebody came to me and said, I have Wraith in my queue, should I pull the trigger on it? I would have to say, maybe you should skip it. Maybe there's a better way to spend an hour and a half, and that would be what I'd have to say on it. It wasn't an absolute dog. It wasn't an absolute stinker, but it wasn't something I can recommend. And I think that this is the kind of movie that is easier to sit back with friends and, pull a Tom Servo on it more than actually watch it and be scared. So, I'm going to be doing a deep dive discussion video where I am going to take elements of it and go further into why I thought it worked, why I thought it didn't. But that should do it for this one. So, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.